Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff Mom Never Told You, production of iHeartRadio. And welcome to another sub segment of fictional women around the world. And today we are talking about Echo, also known as Maya Lopez. And for those of you who are more firmly in the realm of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and less in the comics, then you probably saw her in Hawkeye. And you can see our Kate Bishop episode that we did about a year ago on that, where we talked about her a little bit. But she is getting her own spinoff series, which is filming in Atlanta right now. I have a friend who's working on it. He's being very good about the NDA. Not that I'm like prying too hard.
Wait, do I know who's on there? Do I know them?
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think I've mentioned them before, but no.
Oh.
I have other friends, Samantha.
Do you?
Yes.
No, you don't. Why?
This character is played by Native American actor Alaqua Cox, who is the first Native American hero in the MCU and second deaf hero. Cox also has a below-the-knee prosthetic, which they incorporated into her fighting style in the show.
She's badass.
I know. Yeah. Standard Marvel disclaimer. It's complicated. And I'm familiar with one storyline of this character, but when I was researching it, I was like, but what? Wait, what? So I'm kind of we're going to be jumping back and forth in a way I hope is not very confusing between the comics and the show, because right now they're similar. But they have a lot of different folks in some places. So like a lot of stuff that is Daredevil in the comics is Hawkeye in the MCU. So things like that. So bear with me. As always, Samantha, you are along for the ride and ask any questions if you get confused.
At least I know who this is.
Yes, yep. So yes, today we are talking about Maya Lopez, a deaf Cheyenne Latin American. She originally was used and manipulated by Kingpin, but she escapes his machinations and goes on to fight against him and his ilk. So, did you like my very dramatic sentence I said?
Yeah,
machinations and ilk.
Yeah. I was like, whoa.
I was feeling it.
You were. I mean, Kingpin earns that drama, for sure.
He does. Oh my gosh.
Vincent D'Onofrio. Fantastic representation.
So, for a bit of history, Maya Lopez was first introduced in the comics in Daredevil #9 in 1999. She grew up with her father, a Cheyenne man named William Crazy Horse Lincoln, after her mother, who was Latina, left. It took a long time for Maya's teachers to realize that she was deaf. In the MCU, her father informed her he could not afford to send her to a specialized school for the deaf, that she had to jump between two worlds, that she could use her speed to overcome strength, things like that. As a child, she learned that her father was working with mobster Kingpin, who goes on to eventually kill her father, and her father places a bloody handprint on her face as he dies, which gets incorporated into her look. And Kingpin becomes her guardian. And she sees him as sort of a father figure. He lies about the circumstance of her father's death, blaming Daredevil, or in the show, Ronin/Hawkeye. He subtly coerces her into learning fighting and performance skills, and she excels in both. One of Maya's key abilities is that she can mimic any action that she sees. And we're talking like music, dance, fighting, everything that you could imagine. And that's where the name Echo comes from. It's very much like Taskmaster from Black Widow.
Is that implicated in the show, in the Hawkeye show?
I think it was kind of hinted at, but it was never made really explicit. But I think it was kind of, because you see scenes of, I guess the way I interpreted it is she's just studying people's fighting styles. So you see scenes of that, but it was never made super clear that she has this.
She just seemed to be a badass in herself. So.
Right. That was my vibe too.
Okay. Another question before you jump back in. I know you're going to talk about it in just a second, but why would they change, they just needed to introduce her, so they changed the Patsy to be Hawkeye instead of Daredevil?
I think there are a couple reasons they did that. I think one, Daredevil they've had a little bit of like legal trouble getting that character and kind of figuring out what they're going to do with the old show versus, well, if you've seen recent stuff, then I think that some of that's been resolved. But also their plot line, which I am going to go into, I mean, not that this would have necessarily stopped them, but it's like not the healthiest plot line. It isn't with Hawkeye either, so I don't know. I think they were just like... It makes sense to put him in here. Everybody was waiting for Daredevil to show up in Hawkeye because it's Kingpin.
Right.
So I'm not entirely sure, I guess, is my long-winded answer to say I don't know for sure. So... because of this ability that she has, where she can mimic and echo all of these things, that means that she is great at a whole host of things, from piano to ballet to boxing to composing, everything in between that. When Echo does learn the truth about Kingpin, she turns on him. In the comic, she shoots him in the face and causes him to go temporarily blind, which is supposed to be seen as sort of a justice kind of thing, I suppose. In the show, it's very much painted as a long time coming, or at least in the sense that after her father died, she felt like she should have more control, power, responsibility than she was getting. And she drew a lot of ire for investigating and questioning what really happened to her father. When she confronted Barton about it, he said, /signed in ASL, that they had both been manipulated and used as weapons. Her kind of beau later attacks her after she probes him about where he was when her father died, and also kind of a whole leadership thing going on, claiming he should be the one in her spot, not her. And in the show, she shoots and apparently kills Kingpin, though I don't buy for 1 second that he's dead, not 1 second.
No. Well, didn't he just disappear? Like, you don't see his body.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've seen that, but I think you're right.
Yeah. They come back and he's not there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No way is he's coming back for sure. Okay, but yes, before all of that, in the comics, she met Matt Murdock, not realizing that this was his alter ego, Daredevil, the alter ego of Daredevil, who she believed had killed her father. And the two felt an attraction for each other. Through a variety of things, like studying Daredevil's moves and getting to know Matt Murdock, she realizes that Kingpin lied to her about the circumstances of her father's death. She studied these videos of Daredevil's fighting techniques to copy them and confronted and almost killed him like multiple times. And the only reason she didn't one time was kids were watching, which I thought was like, oh, yeah, not today.
Did you say they were attracted to each other?
Yes.
Isn't she supposed to be significantly younger than him? Am I wrong?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure in the comics, to be honest. I mean, there's still an age gap. I don't know if it's significant, but in the show, it certainly feels like a pretty significant gap.
Let's not do that.
That's why I was like, maybe, but it's also not great with Hawkeye. Anyway,
sorry.
Yes, she's seen teaming up with all kinds of heroes, including Wolverine, and has a romantic relationship with Hawkeye. That doesn't last.
What?
Yep. She also works briefly with Mark Spector / Moon Knight, and they met while she was undercover as a stripper, and they have a romance that doesn't last, if you're seeing a pattern here.
Yeah, why?
Yes. While working with him, she dies in combat but is later revived. She eventually joins the Avengers and assumes the Ronin mantle. And it was a big reveal when you find out who it was. At one point, she encounters and fights Elektra, but learns that it is a Skrull impersonating Elektra. So those are the aliens that can shapeshift.
Yeah.
And so this kickstarts the Secret Invasion plotline, which is a show that is coming soon to the MCU, and they've already had pieces of all over recently.
This universe should have been destroyed 10 times over, it seems, with all of this going down, but okay.
It's so fun to wrangle these plot lines into something that is hopefully coherent. She was also tricked by Loki at one point, who, while disguised as Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, asked for her help for a women's settlement on another planet that was being harassed by gods. Maya agreed, and upon realizing she'd been tricked, had to fight her way out of the situation. And one of the women of the planet gave her a vision of the future, and she saw only fire. Maya incapacitated the god that had been making them fight for entertainment and then left him for the women of the planet to deal with.
Boom.
Yep. Okay. This is where I was like, oh, really? Phoenix Force. I just go with
Phoenix
it.
Force?
Just go with it. I'll try to explain it in a second.
All right. I'm gonna. Okay.
Phoenix Force later had her fight in the Contest of Champions, and she lost in her battle against Namor the Submariner. She was later resurrected once again when the Phoenix chose her as its host. After she collected all these other things, she could fully embody Phoenix Force. And yes, a former host of this power, Jean Grey, contacted her, urging her not to let it consume her, as Maya was reborn as the Phoenix.
Wait, I thought Jean Grey's still alive. That's how the timeline got rewritten.
Yeah. But she contacted her and was like, this is not a good thing. Don't let it consume you.
So she's not the Phoenix anymore?
No. Now Maya is. This was news to me. I'm telling you.
Okay. Interesting.
I know.
Thanks.
It is. And I will say, as we wrap up here, some of the, I can't speak to some of the costumes, not the best. Some of it's pretty good, but some of those tropes you want to avoid when it comes to women and women of color. And then also, no women have written the comics for this character, and I believe no Native American people have written for this character. On the upcoming show, though, the show has hired a couple of deaf writers and several Native American writers. So that's good. And hopefully we're going to see more stuff, more progress like that in the future. But yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes in the show. And as always, if you have any suggestions for people we should be talking about on this segment, please let us know. You can email us at stephaniemomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram at Stuff I Never Told You. Thanks as always to our super producer, Christina.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.